Victoria Sinclair had always been the epitome of propriety. At 32, she was the youngest partner at her prestigious law firm. Known for her sharp mind and unwavering dedication to her career, her life followed a meticulously planned routine. Wake up at 5 a.m, hit the gym, arrive at the office by 7:30, work until late, then home to her immaculate apartment in downtown Chicago. Weekends were for catching up on case files and the occasional brunch with her small circle of equally ambitious friends. She had everything she thought she wanted: success, respect, and financial security. Yet there was an emptiness she couldn't quite name, a yearning for something more that she pushed aside in favour of her next career goal. Victoria's parents, both successful attorneys themselves, had instilled in her a strong work ethic and an unyielding drive for achievement. Romance and personal relationships were luxuries she couldn't afford if she wanted to maintain her trajectory to the top. It was a crisp autumn morning when Victoria's carefully constructed world began to shift. She was preparing for a high-stakes merger case, her most significant yet. The client was Wyatt Industries, a rapidly expanding tech company looking to acquire a smaller competitor. Victoria had been briefed that the CEO, Wyatt Caldwell, was known for his hands-on approach and would be personally involved in the negotiations. As she waited in the conference room, arranging her notes with precision, the door swung open. In walked a man who immediately commanded the room's attention. Wyatt Caldwell was not what Victoria had expected. At 45, he exuded a magnetic charisma that belied his age. His salt and pepper hair was stylishly tousled, and his piercing blue eyes held a hint of mischief. He moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to success, yet there was an approachability about him that put everyone at ease. "Miss Sinclair," he said, extending his hand, "I've heard great things about you. I'm looking forward to working together on this merger." Victoria felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach as she shook his hand. "Mr. Caldwell, it's a pleasure to meet you. I assure you we'll do everything in our power to ensure a smooth acquisition." As the meeting progressed, Victoria found herself increasingly drawn to Wyatt. It wasn't just his physical attractiveness, though that was undeniable, but the way his mind worked. He was sharp, innovative, and surprisingly funny. She caught herself laughing at his witty remarks, something she rarely did in professional settings. Over the next few weeks, Victoria and Wyatt worked closely on the merger. Late nights poring over contracts turned into working dinners, where conversation flowed easily from business to personal interests. Victoria discovered a side of herself she had long suppressed, one that enjoyed art, travel, and spirited debates about books and films. Wyatt too seemed to come alive in Victoria's presence. He confided in her about the pressures of running a company, the loneliness at the top, and his recent divorce. Victoria found herself opening up about her own life, sharing stories of her childhood and the sacrifices she'd made for her career. As the merger negotiations intensified, so did the tension between them. Lingering glances, accidental touches that sent electricity through her body, and an increasing awareness of each other's presence filled the air. Victoria tried to rationalize it as a natural result of their close working relationship, but deep down, she knew it was more. One evening, after a particularly grueling negotiation session, Wyatt suggested they celebrate a small victory with a drink at a nearby bar. Victoria hesitated, knowing she was treading on dangerous ground, but found herself agreeing. The bar was dimly lit and intimate, jazz playing softly in the background. As they sipped their drinks, the conversation turned personal. Wyatt leaned in, his voice low. "You know, Victoria, I've never met anyone quite like you. You're brilliant, beautiful, and yet there's a vulnerability about you that's incredibly appealing." Victoria felt her cheeks flush. "Wyatt, we shouldn't be having this conversation. You're my client, and I'm your lawyer." He reached out, gently touching her hand. "Is that all we are to each other?" The touch sent a jolt through her body. Victoria knew she should pull away, but found herself unable to move. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, all the reasons why this was wrong faded away. Wyatt leaned in, and their lips met in a kiss that was both tender and passionate. As they broke apart, reality came crashing back. Victoria stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I'm sorry, I can't do this. This is completely unprofessional. I should go." She rushed out of the bar, her heart pounding. The cool night air did little to clear her head as she hailed a taxi. Back in her apartment, Victoria paced, her mind in turmoil. She had crossed a line, one that could jeopardize her career and everything she had worked for. And yet, the memory of Wyatt's kiss lingered, making her question everything she thought she knew about herself. The next day at the office, Victoria tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept drifting to Wyatt. When her phone buzzed with a message from him asking to meet, she knew she should decline. Instead, she found herself agreeing to see him that evening. They met in a secluded corner of a park, away from prying eyes. Wyatt looked as conflicted as she felt. "Victoria, I can't stop thinking about last night," he began. "I know it's complicated, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in years." Victoria took a deep breath. "Wyatt, we can't do this. You're my client. There are ethical considerations, not to mention the potential scandal if anyone found out. It could ruin both our careers." He stepped closer, his eyes intense. "I understand the risks, but I also know that what's between us is real. I'm willing to step back from the merger, to find another law firm if that's what it takes." The offer stunned Victoria. It was a solution, but one that came with its own set of problems. "You can't do that," she protested. "This merger is too important for your company. We need to be professional about this." But even as she said the words, Victoria knew she was fighting a losing battle. The attraction between them was palpable, a force that seemed to draw them together, despite all logical arguments against it. In the weeks that followed, Victoria and Wyatt tried to maintain a professional facade. But stolen moments, a brush of hands as they exchanged documents, lingering glances across the conference room, only intensified their connection. They began to find excuses to meet outside of work, always in discreet locations where they wouldn't be recognized. Their relationship deepened, evolving beyond mere physical attraction. Victoria found in Wyatt a kindred spirit, someone who understood the pressures of her world and challenged her to see beyond it. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream of a life that wasn't solely defined by her career. As the merger neared its final stages, the strain of their secret began to take its toll. Victoria's colleagues noticed her distraction, the uncharacteristic errors that crept into her work. She found herself lying to friends and family, making excuses for her sudden unavailability. The situation came to a head when Victoria's mentor and senior partner, Eleanor, called her into her office. "Victoria," she began, her tone serious, "I've noticed some changes in you lately. Your work, while still good, isn't up to your usual standards. Is everything all right?" Victoria felt a wave of panic. "Everything's fine, Eleanor. I've just been a bit overwhelmed with the Wyatt Industries case. It's more complex than we anticipated." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Is that all it is? Because there are rumours, Victoria. Rumours about you and Wyatt Caldwell." The blood drained from Victoria's face. She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Eleanor sighed, disappointment evident in her expression. "Victoria, I don't need to tell you how serious this is. If there's any truth to these rumours, you need to end it immediately. Your career, everything you've worked for, is at stake." Leaving Eleanor's office, Victoria felt her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. She knew what she had to do, but the thought of ending things with Wyatt left her feeling hollow. That evening, she met Wyatt at their usual spot in the park. His smile faded as he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching for her hand. Victoria pulled away, steeling herself. "We can't do this anymore, Wyatt. People are starting to suspect. My partner spoke to me today. If this gets out, it's not just my career on the line. The entire merger could be compromised." Wyatt's face fell. "We knew this would be difficult, Victoria, but I thought we agreed it was worth it. I love you. I'm willing to face whatever consequences come our way." His words, so sincere and passionate, nearly broke her resolve. Victoria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I love you too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes love isn't enough. We come from different worlds, Wyatt. This was never going to work." She turned to leave, but Wyatt caught her arm. "Don't do this, Victoria. We can find a way. I'll step down from the company if I have to. We can go public with our relationship after the merger is complete." For a moment, Victoria allowed herself to imagine that future, a life with Wyatt, free from secrets and stolen moments, but reality intruded, harsh and unyielding. "And then what?" she asked. "Your board would never accept it. My firm would question every decision I've made on this case. Our reputations would be in tatters." Wyatt's grip loosened, the fight leaving him as he recognized the truth in her words. "So this is it? We just walk away and pretend none of this ever happened?" Victoria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She leaned in, kissing him one last time, trying to memorize every detail of this moment. Then, gathering all her strength, she turned and walked away, leaving Wyatt standing alone in the darkening park. The next few weeks were a blur of activity as the merger reached its conclusion. Victoria threw herself into work with a fervour that surprised even her most dedicated colleagues. She was determined to see the deal through, to prove to herself and others that her judgment hadn't been compromised. Wyatt, true to his word, maintained a professional distance. Their interactions were limited to necessary meetings, each painfully formal and devoid of the warmth that had characterized their relationship. Victoria caught glimpses of pain in his eyes that mirrored her own, but they both played their parts perfectly. As the final documents were signed and the merger became official, Victoria felt a mix of relief and profound sadness. She had achieved a major career milestone, but the victory felt hollow. In the following days, as the firm celebrated their success, Victoria found herself going through the motions, smiling and accepting congratulations, while feeling increasingly disconnected from it all. It was during this time that Victoria began to reevaluate her life choices. The experience with Wyatt had awakened something in her, a desire for connection, for a life rich in experiences beyond the confines of her career. She started to question whether the path she had so diligently followed was truly making her happy. Months passed, and Victoria gradually began to heal. She took tentative steps towards changing her life, starting with small things. She joined a book club, rekindled old friendships she had neglected, and even took a painting class. Her colleagues noticed the change in her. She was still dedicated to her work, but there was a new balance to her life, a lightness that hadn't been there before. 1 year after the merger, Victoria found herself at a charity gala hosted by her firm. As she mingled with clients and colleagues, she caught sight of a familiar face across the room. Wyatt was there, looking as handsome as ever in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. Wyatt made his way over to her, a soft smile on his face. "Hello, Victoria," he said, his voice warm. "It's good to see you." Victoria felt her heart race, but it was different now. Not the frantic, forbidden excitement of before, but a gentle, bittersweet ache. "Hello, Wyatt. How have you been?" They fell into easy conversation, catching up on the past year. Victoria learned that Wyatt had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company, focusing more on mentoring young entrepreneurs. He spoke of his newfound passion for philanthropy and his plans to start a foundation. As they talked, Victoria realized that while the attraction between them was still there, it had evolved into something different, a deep respect and fondness, tinged with the knowledge of what might have been. They had both grown in the time apart, finding new purpose and direction in their lives. As the evening drew to a close, Wyatt touched her arm gently. "I'm glad we had this chance to talk, Victoria. I want you to know that I don't regret what happened between us. It changed me, made me realize what was truly important in life." Victoria smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "I feel the same way, Wyatt. Our time together taught me that there's more to life than just work. It opened my eyes to possibilities I had never considered before." They parted ways with a warm hug, both understanding that this was a form of closure. As Victoria watched Wyatt disappear into the crowd, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Their relationship, forbidden as it had been, had served as a catalyst for change in both their lives. In the days that followed, Victoria found herself reflecting on her journey. The ambitious young lawyer who had been solely focused on her career seemed like a different person now. She had learned that life was not about adhering to a predetermined path, but about being open to experiences and connections that could reshape one's world. Victoria's relationship with Wyatt, though brief and complicated, had been a turning point. It had shown her the importance of balance, of allowing herself to be vulnerable, to love and be loved. While their romance hadn't lasted, its impact had been profound and lasting. As she sat in her office, looking out over the Chicago skyline, Victoria felt a sense of excitement for the future. She had no idea what it held, but for the first time in her life, she was okay with that uncertainty. She had learned that the most meaningful growth often came from unexpected places, from taking risks and opening oneself up to new possibilities. Victoria picked up a framed photo on her desk, a picture of herself at a recent volunteer event, surrounded by smiling children. It was a reminder of the new direction her life had taken, the fulfillment she had found in giving back to her community. She traced the smile on her face in the photo, recognizing the genuine happiness that radiated from it. Her intercom buzzed, her assistant reminding her of an upcoming meeting. Victoria gathered her files, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As she walked out of her office, she caught her reflection in the glass door. The woman looking back at her was confident, serene, and full of purpose. A far cry from the tightly wound professional she had been a year ago. Victoria stepped into the hallway, embracing the person she had become. Her forbidden relationship with Wyatt may have ended, but it had set her on a path of self-discovery and growth. She had learned that true success wasn't measured by titles or accolades, but by the richness of one's experiences and the depth of one's connections. As she entered the conference room, greeting her colleagues with a warm smile, Victoria knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it with an open heart and a newfound wisdom. The story of her and Wyatt may have reached its conclusion, but her own story was far from over. It was in many ways just beginning.